Welcome to History Radio with me, Nse Victor King. I want to give you the history of Nigeria from 1914 amalgamation, how and why Nigeria kept going from bad to worse. Listen very attentively. I will be discussing with my colleague, Samuel Nze, Uncle AJ. But before then, don't forget to follow us and subscribe to our YouTube channel for other in-depth Nigerian history, stories, and revelations. Now, after the amalgamation by Lord Lugard and the British in 1914, I want Nigerians to listen very attentively. They brought the British colonial administration, and there was transformation. You know, when the British took over the powers, things were not as bad. You know, at least things were there. The people saw transformation in various aspects, and you know, things were moving fine.
You brother would wear lights, no day.
Yes,
lights
all those
day.
Things. Okay, for example, when we went to
there was lights.
We went to the Julius Berger the other time. I showed you one block that was built in 1984.
And it still stands till now.
That was what white men did, you know. So, but why this thing was going on? Let's not also forget that the white men don't play with tax, so they were taxing people up and down, and that was what led to the Aba women riot because of increase in taxation and all that. So
that was in 1920.
Yeah, in the 20s. Now that was, you know, what led to a lot of Nigerians started feeling cheated. They were like, I can do this thing better than
even the banning of Gari too,
and the rest, all those things.
The Second World War that led to the Gari illegal and the rest of them.
So even before we got to the issue of the Second World War, that before the banning of Gari, it started in the early, you know, after 1914, you know, when those things, you know, those white men started, you know, collecting tax and all that, people started feeling cheated. Well, like, these people cannot continue to be our leaders. We need to, you know, lead ourselves by ourselves. So they felt cheated and wanted to control the economy themselves. We ourselves, we wanted to control the economy by ourselves. So in the early 20s, some European educated Nigerians. So one of the things these Europeans did, I don't know what people call it mistake, was that they educated.
Or was it intentional? Actually, it's not intentional.
I don't know. You know, not intentional. At least they colonized us for years. So they wanted us to know what they knew, so they took some of us to their place and educated us.
That's what I'm saying. It's not okay. Some people are saying it's mistakes.
Because even the white man, you know, one thing with the white man is that the white man knows what will happen in 200, 300, predicts, not know now, predict what happen in 200 or 300 years. They knew that forever they cannot colonize us forever. That one day they will hand over power, one day they will leave, whether they like it or not. You know, so they wanted people that they will hand over to. So they had to educate us. They took some of us outside and educated us. They were European educated Nigerians. You know, when they now got there, got the education and now came back, these Nigerians started pushing for, you know, began to push for control of the power. And at the forefront was a man called Sir Herbert Macaulay.
That way they for 1 naira note.
Yes.
Or 1 naira coins.
Yeah, 1 naira coin, 1 naira now.
That we get
10 naira is Albani Kuku, right?
Albani Kuku, yes.
So Herbert Macaulay was the first person who started this thing. Started for protein, you know, called, you know, that time Lagos was the.
And Macaulay is from Lagos State.
Yeah, it's a Yoruba man.
Yeah.
So he started pushing, and he was a civil engineer turned journalist. You know, journalism. When we know this is our work, you know, it's like you know everything. so of course he was well read. Now became a engineer and a journalist come together. You know, he was so exposed, and so he started organizing protest that no, the white men cannot continue to lead us, and started, you know, and having a lot of people started, you know, supporting him, and he was a strong opposition towards the colonial rule. Now, after that, because of the way he was pulling crowd, it led to what we call the Clifford Constitution, which now allowed more Nigerians in the newly formed Legislative Council. You know, there was a Senate then.
And it
was mostly whites.
And
we were not educated, so even if you put in that legislative, how will you even know?
Nothing.
You just sit down and be watching. So yes, they can even pick 1 or 2 people and put there, and then the person just sit down and be observing. They'll be speaking their sure, or say So when Herbert Macaulay now came, you know, started pushing, started doing that, they now brought about the Clifford Constitution, which allowed more Nigerians into a legislative council. So when it worked out, Nigeria said, so this if you walk. So in the 1930s, other Nigerians now came out and started asking for more. You know, since Albert Macaulay have done this.
Oliver Twist only ask for more.
And they're asking for more. And they were all European educated Nigerians too, and they kept mounting pressures on the white for self-governance. So this new generation, nationalists, they call them nationalists, all these people, not knowing that some of them all have their hidden agenda. They will always put the national thing in front. Now, this new generation of nationalists now formed an organization then, and short, even they started challenging Herbert Macaulay's, protests. Like they formed their own organization, started attacking them, protesting against Herbert Macaulay, that he was not even doing it well, that they are the new generation, nationally, their blood they hot that time. And this organization, they now formed an organization that challenged Macaulay's control, and this organization was known then as the Lagos Youth Movement, which was later became the Nigerian Youth Movement of 1934. Now, they started by saying that they need quality education for Nigerians, and in 4 years, there's this association, whenever you put those things in front, and we need education, we need hospital, we need this better. Not that they were not hospitals or education, but they wanted it better.
Better ones.
They wanted it better because they were like, the white men were not doing it the way they are doing it in their place. So they wanted that quality on that standard immediately, not just little by little, immediately. Just like people keep saying this change.
No, we don't get them now. 1930. No, those things all they shout 19 that no, are they common? Education, good school.
We are still shouting the same thing.
Hospital. We are still shouting it till now. Let's continue.
So they started by saying they need quality education, we need hospital and blah blah blah. And while they were grammaring for this thing, in 4 years, the association now grew into Lagos and got up to 10,000 members. But where this man came from, Nnamdi Azikiwe, was one of the new generation nationalists. Now, when Nnamdi Azikiwe now came up, this led to him. They gave him the leadership of this new organization, this Nigerian Youth Movement. He now became the leader of that organization. And but in 1941, he left the Nigerian Youth Movement because of dispute. They go to fight themselves.
They never even collect what they want to. Fights don't start.
They started fighting themselves over a dispute, over an election which he felt was being marked by ethnic rivalry.
So maybe today we don't start this ethnicity.
So he now left the group with a large percentage of the group members and now joined with Herbert Macaulay, and forming what they call the NCNC, which is the National Council for Nigeria and the Cameroons.
Now, don't forget, say Cameroon was part of us then. Some part of Cameroon, that Bakassi side was part of Nigeria then.
Them along, So in 1945, the Nigerian workers struck this same NLC strike. Now we struck for 37 days over the increase in the cost of living, and so they shut down the economy. And Azikiwe was the person in front of this strike. By this time, him and Herbert Macaulay, they now came together and they started doing this thing. So the NCNC later changed to the National Convention of Nigerian Citizens. They now removed the Cameroon. The National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, NCNC, was later changed to the National Convention of Nigerian Citizens. But it still means the same NCNC, and they took part actively in that strike. And like I said, they struck for 37 days, holding the country to ransom. So, and white men now, once you strike like that, they always listen. So because of the strike and all that, so between that 1945 and 1954, it now brought about 3 new constitutions, which are marked as and the first of those constitutions was the Richard Constitution, because that Richard was the Governor General of the governor, the person in charge. Then, after Lord Lugard, they started having other ones, and so they had the Richard Constitution, and this Richard Constitution allowed Nigerians to be majority in the governance and legislation now.
But the whites go still day.
yes, a white good day, but Nigeria will now be majority. You know, because of that strike. You know what they mean? They held the country to around of 37 days. Nobody moved anywhere. So the white was shaking. It's okay. No, Allah now things are
see what protest strike figures.
You know, you understand. So it allowed Nigerians now to become, you know, majority. Now Nigerians now had legislators in all the regions, and Lagos had the central. You know, so all those regions, the western side had their legislation now. The northern side have
get their own, and the east too get their own.
Now Nigeria now had legislators in all this side, and the essence of this constitution was to bring unity among Nigerians. So that, you know, all the Igbos, Yoruba would still be in, you know,
one house.
That was the essence of the white man. Not knowing that this thing will be dividing us the more. So the NCNC, which was like a national body for the nationalists and Nigerians, started becoming regionally inclined.
Because you say how many people there? So, 20 there, 5 there. No.
Because an Igbo man was in charge. So Igbos joined that one, now became majority. And now hijack that one. Now, the Nigerian youth movement that Azikiwe broke out of was now dominated by the Yorubas, you know, and now fell under the leadership of a very wealthy Yoruba man, cocoa farmer at that time, and businessman. He was known as Obafemi Awolowo. It now became the action group dominated by Yorubas. You see what You see what is going on now? Because the Yoruba man was in charge, so Yoruba go fool that one. The one where Igbo man in charge, Igbo go fool that one. And now don't forget Hausa too. They carry last.
They can't get their own too.
So as at 1943, Hausa they don't even they plan their own, you know. And in the north, they have what they call the Northern People Congress. Those ones they don't hide their own.
But where they come put their own north? Other people not put.
That's what I'm saying. I said they don't hide their own.
Southern, western.
No. This one they don't pretend. Now you they pretend.
So they make their own northern. So now northerners they their own
Congress, and it was formed by 3 standard educated northerners. These guys were very educated. First one was Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. The second person was called Saad Zungu. The third person was called Aminu Kano. This Saad Zungu was a very intelligent Hausa guy. He was a poet. He may not be informed, he may not be popular, but he was the one doing the dirty jobs.
And they do the underground intelligence, the thinking,
and
the think tank.
Tafawa Balewa were bearing names, but Saad Zungu was the bad guy. So they were putting things in order so that, you know, every region becomes more powerful. But the NPC put, you know, because this younger Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, Saad Zungu and Aminu Kano, they were very young, and so they wanted somebody who was much, you know, who was much older, you know, to take over the leadership of the Northern People Congress. And then now they brought it under the leadership of a man called Sir Ahmadu Bello, the Saldana of Sokoto. Now, in 1950, Sir John McPherson, the colonial governor, you know, after they now took over from Richard, and now reviewed the Richard Constitution, and now brought about what they call the McPherson Constitution. Now, this McPherson Constitution now expanded the regional assembly and make provision for the first general election in the country, which brought about the independence that we talked about.
Okay.
Now, as the general election approached, the NCNC, the Action Group, and the Northern People Congress now became full-fledged political party in their various regions. You know, it was just like a movement.
Now they don't agree saying a political
party. Everybody
based on to contest election as a movement before, no be election this thing. Now just to cover the interests of my own people.
Now it became a political party. In 1951, controversy.
So don't be today this issue of ethnic political party starts.
No, but this is how it starts now. How to tell you?
Say like this party now for this people. This other party now for these people.
How it start now? That's what you think. When the people keep asking, how did we get here? See how we got here.
Never even start anything.
In 1951, while they were planning for by this time it was not glaring that the white will hand over power. So the problem now was that who
they want over this power to?
So there was a controversy between the leaders of these political parties as regards the centralized government who is going to lead. You know, and then this led. And while we were busy gagging, we were busy arguing and fighting ourselves. We were not thinking of solution. It was even the white man that brought about a solution, and it brought about what they call the Littleton Constitution.
Okay.
And that enacted that and it was enacted in 1954 and firmly established a federal principle, and this paved way for Nigeria's independence from Great Britain. So in that 1957, Tafawa Balewa and of NPC of another.
So now Littleton now even bring out the federal system. Where would they operate today? I you know say, like I've been telling somebody saying, waiting work for Igbo, you know work for us. You don't understand, but like when they talk about the federal system, if you work for Igbo, then maybe for maybe not like unity.
We were already divided, so
that kind of thing. So federal, a very big issue, right? But we could continue.
So in 1957, Tafawa Balewa of NPC, of the Northern People Congress, now became they now, because of the population that they had, they now put Tafawa Balewa as the first prime minister. Even before 1960, already after 1957, was already prime minister. They put him there. Now the final election that will determine the first independent government.
But as you say, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Senate president.
Yes, he was just this was.
I'm saying they are Senate president
1960.
Before 1960,
yes. When he was now prime minister, now Nnamdi Azikiwe was like a Senate president the central, okay, the central legislation. Now the final election that will determine the first independent government was now conducted in 1959, and now the Northern People's Congress got the highest number of seats, led by and because what happened was that Nnamdi Azikiwe went and colluded with the North. He speaks Hausa very well.
Nnamdi Azikiwe.
Yeah.
Zikism.
Yeah. He now went and colluded with Tafawa Balewa. And when they did that, the Igbos and the Hausa, now came together and they outnumbered the Yorubas. And now this coalition now making the Action Group, the Yoruba Party now, the major opposition, because they now outnumber them. So Tafawa Balewa now
merging they start from this party and this party go merge together. Take now another party.
Tafawa Balewa now maintain his seat as the prime minister.
Sorry, I beg, before you talk about maintaining the seat, say when you talk about merging parties, like where they sit today, we talk about any party where they merge already. Normally, supposed to be like, I get the same ideology with you. It's supposed to be like an ideology merging together, not for selfish interest.
But they were putting selfish interest in.
That's what I'm saying. That's selfish interest. Now, you know why they talk? Now the same two will still they face today. Today now not be ideology and identity, because guy, no worry. Now you go do for 8 years, so that when you finish, I'll come do my own 8 years. So go come together. You go first. If you do finish, I'll come go my own.
So Tafawa Balewa now, after the election, Tafawa Balewa now maintained his seat as the prime minister, while Nnamdi Azikiwe of the NCNC became the first governor general, and so Nigeria had their independence in
1960, 1st of October.
So the NCNC, when they now came together now with the NPC, the NCNC and the Northern People Congress now had a problem.
These two people we matched
together now started having a problem. So they now had a problem. The NCNC and the Northern People Congress now had a the Northern People Congress coalition with the NCNC now had a problem because the leader Tafawa Balewa, and the Saudana wanted more educated Northerners, because they felt that the colonial masters purposely refused to develop the North compared to the South. Because we had highly educated people in the southern part of the country compared to the northerners. So the party was dominated by a lot of northerners, and most of the welfare of the members were targeted mostly at northerners, and they gave out promotions and appointments to underqualified people, as long as you are from the north, at the expense of even more qualified southerners. You see, this didn't start today. So a larger percentage of funds were now appropriated to northern projects.
No be Oyibo that be our problem now.
They don't give us power now.
They don't say Shepherd I want
take. We say we can do it better. They now give it to us now.
And we say with an agreement take collect.
So we now collected it and started fighting ourselves. Now, a larger percentage of funds were appropriated to the northern projects compared to southern projects. And so, when these things started happening, the southerners began to question the kind of federalism that we were actually, practicing, while we were favoring ethnicity at the expense of merit. While this was going on, on the aspect of the action group, they were still fighting themselves to the Yoruba side.
Okay, in between now, they fight themselves.
Yes.
Why the merger they fight themselves?
The merger fighting themselves.
The opposition party will suppose
they fight themselves too.
They fight themselves.
The same thing that is happening now in Labour Party, Apapa group and the Aburi group, PDP, 5G governors.
Instead there could be opposition.
Oh, no, be today. So members of the party, of the action group, began to see or felt like the opposition party status was not recognized in the central body. So they wanted to start leaving the party now, because they now discovered that the northern people and the eastern people were having a problem. So the people from the action group, now the Yoruba side, wanted to go and have an affiliation with it, take advantage of the situation to go and have an affiliation with the north to make it stronger now. You understand? So one of the people with this thought was Ladoke Akintola, who was by this time had succeeded Awolowo as the premier of the Western region in that 1959. So Awolowo did not like this. So he tried to remove Ladoke Akintola to replace him with his ally, which was Chief Adegbenro.
Adegbenro?
Yeah. So this brought a lot of parliamentary crises in the action group, and Tafawa Balewa, the prime minister, now declared a state of emergency in the Western region because of the problem, that ensued as a result of that, and suspended the action group for 6 months and replaced it with an interim government. After 6 months, Ladoke Akintola now was reporting back. Ladoke Akintola now became the premier of the Western region, and now to make things worse, because of for the Western side, they now created what they call the Midwestern region.
So now the West now don't they divided
again the more.
Now they don't get the Midwestern region.
The Midwestern region today are Delta State and Edo State. The Shekiri side, they always affiliate them, like some of the language sounds like Yoruba, and they have this Yoruba.
And even Edo, the Benin side.
Yeah. Where we have the Edo and Delta today, they were now called the Midwestern region. So they carved them out of the Western because they were in the Western region before now. So they now carved them out, weakening the Western region the more. And when this thing happened, things became worse for them, and the leaders of the action group, some of them were already in prison on the charges of treason and corruption. Now Obafemi Awolowo and Chief Tony Enahoro and Chief Lateef Jakande were all in prison by this time. So in 1962, during the 1962 census, it was time for the Southerners in the East and the Easterners and the Western region to prove a point to the North that they can also have control over power. Everybody was after power.
Not even development.
Not even
the education now where them they fight for from beginning. Not even the healthcare system where them been they fight for from beginning. We make them collect power
from
Oyibo hand. Now they don't look for now. Who just collect the power. Now our people. I know the worst part. Waiting I find out then where this happen till today be same. The people now where they then. Now my person must get the power. Whether he gets sense or not.
Just collect power.
Whether na mumu or not, whether na thief or not, whether na criminal. So far it come from my place. Now making I get the power.
I hope we are even learning from all these things. I hope we are learning.
How did we get
here?
Moko continue the year how we take it here.
So it was time for the Southerners to also prove to the Northerners that look, we can control this thing too. So they can have control over the central, and this thing was based on the number of seats in the National Assembly of each region. Because of the population of the region, when you have a lot of population like the North, you have more seats in the National Assembly. That was how it was. So the Southerners felt that if they can manipulate the figures of the census, that their numbers of seats in the National Assembly will increase. And so they did that, and all of a sudden the number of the Southerners during the census now increased to 70% compared to the 30% increase in the North. When Tafawa Balewa saw this, he refused to accept the result, and the following year another census was conducted, and it was now time for the Northern People Congress to manipulate their own figure. And when they now manipulated their own figure the following year, trust the North now, 8 million new northerners were discovered.
That them born picking immediately.
Within 1 year.
8 million.
So now one rig. So 8 million new northerners now emerge. So the NCNC rejected the result too.
Because I thought I said the population can't shoot up
immediately now.
That and is it which country be that get the same population that period?
Immediately we overtake them.
I want to overtake them times 3 every times 4.
Now our population now increased to 55 million all of a sudden, and the north had 29 million from this population.
All right.
So when the southerners now discover that they have lost out of this fight from rigging the census and controlling the National Assembly and the political parties, they now concentrated on how to win the next election the following year. They power. They were so obsessed about power. So the NCNC now had a coalition with the Action Group now. You understand? They had a coalition with the
NCNC
and Yoruba now came together.
So the Action Group no go for the north again.
Now the Action Group was even divided. The Action Group was now divided. So what they now did is that the NCNC had a coalition with the Action Group and some other minority parties from the north, to form a new unitary party which they call the United Progressive Grand Alliance, UPGA. Also, the northern people too, also seeing that, they also had a coalition with a Akintola faction of the Action Group, and they also had some other minority party from the south too. They just formed the Nigerian National Alliance. That was the name of the party. So the campaigns were bloody. When the southerners want to come to the north to campaign, the northerners will stop them. They will not campaign. They will cause problem. When the southerners want to go to the south to campaign, the southerners will stop them, arrest them, and there was problem.
So maybe today this issue starts where we say this party don't campaign. Campaign. Before I know they will stop billboard. Yeah. No put billboard here. No do this one. How do we get
here?
Continue.
So now, since most of the people handling the elections were, a lot of them were from the NNA, the Nigerian National Alliance, that is the northerners and the people who were in power, so comprising the more northerners. So they had the advantage that they could hamper the result of the election to their favor because everybody wanted this power at all costs. So angered by by this time they started intimidating the southern people, using national power, the power because they were in power at that time. So angered by the intimidation they faced, so the Eastern, the NCNC now, that is the Azikiwe's party now, threatened to boycott the election, but the boycott was only in the eastern part of the country. So the northerners, they continue with the election, and a lot of seats were unopposed in favor of NNA. So after the election,
say in favor of
the north now.
North.
You understand? So
that is Northern People's
Party. By this time they are forming a new party now because they can't get coalition up and down. That's the new party was now called Nigerian National Alliance. After the election now, Tafawa Balewa now called Zik. For them to have a unity, let's have a united government, but it's going to be led by NNA, which is our party. So Zik refused, but after a lot of talks, he now accepted, with the terms of and condition that all the places that were boycotted, they have to be a rerun in those places. So but when Tafawa Balewa now accepted, they went to some of those places, they did the rerun, and especially in the east, the Azikiwe's party got almost all the seat there. But when they went to the southern, the western part of the country now for the rerun, for where Wahala Komo. So the NNA won 100. During the election, the NNA, that's the northern party now won 196 seats out of 312 seats. Chief Adegbenro, the acting leader of the Action Group, now announced 68 seats for himself and said because the Yorubas now, the northern people still grab the Yoruba side. They still grab the Yoruba side, and so what they did now, the person who was the ally with Zik, that is Chief Adegbenro, now announced 66 seats for himself, announced that he's forming an interim government
Don't forget, so don't be hear this language one time. If you lose, we will have a parallel
government.
I don't know where did he get all this English from. The interim government.
And so when he did that, the government arrested him. Throughout, because of the arrests,
crisis don't start with that.
Started throughout October, November, December of 1965. The supporters of the UPGA protested the result of the election result, and a lot of clashes between the police and the western part of the country. So the western part of the country became so wild. So instead of state of emergency to be declared in the western part of the region, Tafawa Balewa decided to send military, but it was not enough to stop the control. So after the whole thing, there was problem everywhere in the country, crisis, police shoot, blah blah blah. So at a point, disgusted by what was going on in the country, after just 6 years of independence, some young military officers in the rank of major decided to take over power and stop this nonsense. So the plan now was that they have to overthrow the government and clear the mess, and they will release Obafemi Awolowo from prison and hand over power to him as president. So in the early hours of January 15, 1966, they struck. Coming up next is the part 2 of this series, which is the first coup in Nigeria, January 1966. But before then, don't forget to follow us and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also click on the link at the comment section to take you to our other channels for in-depth Nigerian history, stories, and revelations. Thanks for listening. My name is Nse Victor King. I am your historian.